Hello, my Juicy co-creators. Lilous here on the Juicy Living Tour. Today I'm on the beautiful island of Maui in Hawaii with a very special person that I was introduced to and is very often mentioned in a lot of interviews with very well-known people around the world. And I'm here with Jacob Liberman. Hello.
Hello, hello. It's nice to be with you.
Nice to be with you too in your own home here on Maui. Yeah. You have done tremendous work, pioneer work. You're an optometrist. How do we say this in English?
Optometrist and vision scientist, yes.
You wrote many books, and we're really going to speak about the light, the vision, the consciousness. You believe that light is the medicine of the future. Is that right?
I think it's the medicine of the now. I think it's the medicine in each moment of life. Because the light that enters our eyes is continually guiding every part of our being to the smallest portion of every cell to continually respond to life. So basically, light entering the eyes causes every cell to orchestrate its internal function and then synchronize itself with Mother Nature. In other words, the whole purpose of light is to guide us into a state of oneness with life. So light entering the body cues everything in our being about what's happening in Mother Nature. And then the whole process is for our nature and Mother Nature to come into oneness. So light is the most powerful environmental factor. It is continually stimulating and regulating and cueing every piece of our physiology and neurology on a continual level so that we are always dancing, flowing, if you will, effortlessly with life. So that is the homeodynamic process of life is guided by light.
And in that light, therefore, there is information that comes to us?
Yes. Well, think about it this way. You're looking at me because light over here has grabbed the attention of your eye. And your eye responded as a reflex, just like your knee when the doctor hits it, and is looking in this direction. So the light is guiding the eye. It grabs the attention of the eye. That's why we say, oh, it caught my eye. But what was the it? The it is the intelligence of life, and the intelligence of life is impregnated into this formless, non-material something that is totally invisible called light. The light brings the message of the universe into the eye. The eye has to look at the light, and then the person knows where to move next in their life. So the intelligence of life is guiding every step of our life. We are not looking for things as we believe. Life is looking for us. Grabs the attention of the eye, and it tells the eye where to look next. What is next? That's the next step of my life. The same light entering the eyes, as I mentioned before, keeps bringing my physiology into appropriate relationship with life itself. That's how we know when to wake up, when to go to sleep. That's what regulates the cycle of a woman on a monthly level. That's what regulates all of the cycles of our life, is light, entering by way of the eyes, the windows of the soul.
So why is there sometimes we see some things and not some others? Why are we more receptive then to a certain light or to a certain path than another?
We each have a different nature. There are thousands of trees that are part of the tree kingdom, but they're all different. Some of them are shorter and wider. Some of them are taller and thinner. Some have very deep roots. Some have very shallow roots. Some of them, when the wind blows, they break. Some of them, when the wind blows, they dance. So they all have a different nature. They are all responding differently, having a different job, if you will. We're all we're all human beings. Aside from our size differences, aside from the coloration of our skin, we are each born with certain skills. Artists are not made. They're born as artists. Even really exceptional athletes, yes, they can improve their game through practice, but they're natural. They know it by heart. It's there from the beginning. So we are not all designed to see the world the same. Some look at the trees, some see the forest, some have a little bit of both. There's probably an infinite number of varieties. Why do we see differently? Each of us brings a different perception to life, and all together those perceptions make up the experience that we have.
Would you say that, I mean, all of us want to experience great life. We want to experience our potential, especially when we're on the spiritual journey. So most of us want to have this, you know, this information, this light come to us so we can live our greatest potential. You're saying that vision is really not just from the eye, but from the heart. So, and I love that you say that. It makes perfect sense. And then our vision of the world expands, and then we can see more. So more light can come in. Is that correlated?
Yes. You know, there's one of my very favorite pieces was written 1800 years ago. It's called the Sin Sin Ming. It was written by the third Zen patriarch. And the beginning of the piece says, "The great way is not difficult for those who have no preferences." In other words, when you are unconditionally accepting, then you have the ability to see the great way. Jesus said it in a different way. He's quoted as saying, when you see up and down as the same, when you see the outside and the inside as the same, when you see a man as a woman and a woman as a man, when thine eye be single, you shall enter the kingdom. In other words, when you don't see it as this way or this way, but when there's an unconditional acceptance, you will see the kingdom. The kingdom and the great way are essentially the same thing. You're talking about what Jonathan Swift was talking about when he said real vision is the ability to see the invisible. You begin to see that which is not visible to most. The doorway for me to that possibility is when we begin to become more unconditionally accepting of what is, which is very different than wanting it my way. It's a very different process. You said everyone wants to experience their greatness. Everyone wants to do all these different things. Well, there's a difference between want to and have to. In my particular case, it's choiceless. I have nothing to say about it. This is the path that I'm on. I've been on it for a long time, and something will not let me go somewhere else. That doesn't mean that life is perfect. That doesn't mean that sometimes I don't experience upsetness or illness, or there isn't a person on earth that doesn't experience all of those things while they're living. But there's something that has me on a journey towards truth. And it's not that I want it. It's that I must go there. That's what it is. Now, for each person, that may be very different. For each person, we are guided in a slightly different way. But that is my particular journey, and the vision, there's a reason people say, I see. It means I understand. Mm-hmm. It means that there is a knowing. There's a reason people with exceptional vision are known as visionaries. There's a reason that light has always been associated with spiritual development, with quantum leaps in insight, with the unknown, with godliness, with, I mean, if you go to scientists today and you speak about quantum mechanics, interestingly enough, is if a physicist begins to describe to you the behavior of light, even though they will use different words, they will say that light behaves as if it is omnipotent, omniscient, and omnipresent. Precisely the same words that the Bible used in describing God. That's why Jesus said, God is light. So there is an inseparability between light, the eye, and this thing we call consciousness. They're probably all the same thing. I don't know if there's a way of separating them. And so it's a very exciting area to be part of.
Yes. So what would you say is the relationship between light and love?
Light and love. Well...
Or light and the heart.
The relationship between light and the heart. There, first of all, rather than trying to limit to love or the heart, let's talk about the relationship between light and life. Mm-hmm. That includes the heart, that includes love, that includes it all. Okay? If you ask a scientist, what's the nature of reality? What is everything we see and experience made of? They'll say to you, oh, it's energy. It's vibration. And if you say, well, what is that energy called? They will distill it all down to light. They will say that is called light. So everything we experience, all matter, is, as David Bohm said, frozen light. Some way or another, the interaction of light and consciousness causes light to materialize into what we experience as matter. So basically, when you think of light, when you look at the sun, for instance, you experience brightness. You don't see the light. Mm-hmm. You just experience brightness. That brightness is made up of different vibrations, or what we experience as color. The color is not out there. The color is within consciousness. Consciousness creates our perception of the color. What's out there is just vibration. If all of life is just light energy that has been materialized, that means that everything we experience is a combination of those frequencies of energy that we experience as color. Now, if that's the case, then just as we respond differently to different experiences, we should respond differently to different colors, and there should be some relationship between our response to color and our response to an experience in life. So, for instance, if you show people different colors, they will respond to those colors totally differently, totally individualized. One person may love the red, another person may just recoil from the red. One person's physiology may get into deep relaxation with one color, and the same color can cause someone else to go into an anxiety attack. I have found that there's a direct relationship between the vibrations that make up the spectrum of energy we call light and the vibrations that make up the spectrum of energy we call life. So when I show people colors and they say, oh, I like this one and I don't like this one, if I allow them to look at the colors that they're uncomfortable with, it will trigger up the same emotional reactivity that specific experiences in their life will trigger up. Except when they look at the light, the mind cannot block it. So it slips beneath conscious awareness and very gently, like a homeopathic remedy, begins to bring forth anything that's been kept in the dark, if you will, in our being to the surface, so that it can be expelled, and so that we then become receptive again, so that rather than something that we weren't able to embrace, by using light, as we are able to embrace more of the spectrum of light, we simultaneously are able to embrace more of the spectrum of life. What is the significance of that? Let's go back to what I said before. The great way is not difficult for those who have no preferences. When we get to the point that we perceive all of the colors equally, that if you monitor our physiology looks at all of those colors and it doesn't go up or down, it just is in a state of quiescence with all of them. Then what happens is the things that used to trigger our lives, trigger them less and less and less and less, until we get to a point where there is a response to life rather than a reaction to life. And when that occurs, I believe that's when we begin to enter the kingdom. And that's when we begin to notice some of these things that are normally invisible to us. And I think what's really important is to discuss what some of those things are. You see,
let's talk of really having this juicy life, because that's what the kingdom is, huh?
Yeah, that's exactly what the kingdom is a juicy life. And what is a juicy life? A juicy life for me is noticing what is typically unseen. For instance, we look at a material thing and we say, look what I've created. But that material thing, for the most part, is solid. It has no life. It has no heartbeat. But what's really exciting is, how does whatever the creative force is, how does that become that? What is the process where that occurs? And we think we make that happen. But from my experience, there's something very, very different going on. In the beginning of our conversation, I spoke about how light guides the movement of the eye, and how light entering the eye guides the movement of our physiology. What I'm essentially saying is that light guides our life. One of the experiences that I'm having, which is for me the most pertinent thing happening in my life right this moment. I don't know if you have any children, but do you have a sister or a brother? Okay. You have parents. Yes, good. Are your parents living?
And friends from all around the world.
Right. Good. So you know your friends all around the world?
Yes.
Have you had the experience where you're sitting and working, or you're having lunch, and all of a sudden you get a flash of one of your friends? And without a thought, you take your cell phone, you pick it up, you call them wherever they are, could be on the other side of the world, and as soon as they hear your name, they say, oh my God, I was just thinking of you. Have you had this experience? How many? Lots of times? Okay. So when that happens, we just think, oh, it's just a synchronicity, it's just a chance, yes? What if I told you that that's going on all the time? That we just notice it occasionally because we're unaware that it's going on all of the time. Not only is it going on all of the time in terms of you and one other person, it is what brings a variety of things together at one point miraculously to create something. And you say, oh my God, how did that happen? Seemingly a group of unrelated puzzle parts all of a sudden are magnetically drawn together at a precise moment, and all the pieces show up and you say, wow, how did that occur? What I'm noticing in my life is that I'm having a lot of those experiences that I just mentioned to you. And it comes in the oddest of ways. Sometimes in the middle of the night, I'm aware of myself dreaming in the bed. And I'm aware that the dream is about something that's supposed to happen a year from now. And it's just there. And then a year later comes up, and this thing that I saw the year before, it is exactly the way it shows up. How does that happen? What is that allows something to see something that supposedly comes a year later. And if what you saw was shared with someone who can validate that what occurred a year later was the same thing that you shared, what does that say about time? How can time exist if a time that hasn't yet arrived was clear the year before? What does that say about the future? How can there be a future? Mm-hmm. If there cannot be a future, and if time is just a theory, which all scientists really know that, then what is the purpose of trying to create anything? What is it that you're creating? Whatever it is already here. The only thing is that we are attempting to see it from our point of view. And my experience is that these moments of insight come when we disappear. The drop falls into the ocean. The drop no longer exists. The individual doesn't exist any longer. It isn't me who's seeing it. It isn't me that wants something. I literally disappear, and something notices it. Something becomes aware of it. And it's such a powerful experience that when you have it, you will never think that you created it. You will never say, oh, look what I did. Because it's totally humbling. It stops you in your tracks. And you realize the miraculous process in which we live. So I'm not only experiencing these things, I realize they've been going on my whole life. I just didn't see them. And they're very complex. It's not something as simple as I call my daughter and she says, oh, Daddy, I was just thinking about you. It's very profound. It's a series of different people who show up in a place at the same time, and they have no idea even why, and then it becomes clear. I have incredible stories, not only personal stories that I've had that I've have been recording, but people have shared with me unbelievable, real stories just like this that are statistically impossible. Now, if you spoke to a quantum physicist, they would tell you that every photon of light in the universe is aware of every other photon of light in the universe all the time. If this universe is made of light, and we are constructed of these photons of light, then there is something in the core of our makeup that knows everything, everywhere, all the time. It isn't me that knows it. It's not the ego that says, look at me, how much I know. It's not that. There is just a knowing. And once that humility is there, this process begins to occur more and more. Once there is an awareness of that, there is a greater awareness of that, and you begin to see how much of this, how often this process is going on. It's an interesting situation because as human beings, we have 1 foot on earth and 1 foot in the heavens. Mm-hmm. So there's a piece that experiences it from no point of view at times, and there's a piece that experiences it from a human point of view at times. And so where I find myself is in an interesting place. For me, I feel like I'm standing in the middle of a non-existent bridge between there and here. And I have a view of what's coming up, and at the same time, I'm sort of like the little baby bird the first time the mother pushes it out of the nest, and the wings go out, and there's no net to catch it, and it's never flown before, and it says, oh my God, and then all of a sudden the wind catches it, Now you can't see the wind. It's totally invisible, but something catches us. I have experienced the invisible wind catching me many, many times, and yet each time I get pushed out of the nest, I notice there's something inside that says, We have this misconception that we come to a place of awakening and all of a sudden all the difficulties of humanity are no longer there. I have not found that to be true. What I find is that the more we begin to awaken to these things, the more we are aware, the more sensitive we are to these things that are going on this plane. And it doesn't change anything. At times, we find that something gets triggered. At times, the mind is very, very active. Perhaps we pay less attention to it than we used to, but it's still there. If you drop something on your foot, your toe will hurt. Even if you know that you are not your body, the foot will still swell up. If your parents pass away, God forbid, or a close friend, you will mourn. I don't care how enlightened you are, you will feel the pain in your heart. You will have days that are not so sunny. So I think what's important is to share about the reality of life, rather than creating some idea that once we hit the juicy life realm, life no longer has any more problems. The relationship is always perfect. Money is always flowing and effortless. I always find a parking space. I can create my own reality. I can choose whatever I want. When people share this with me, I say, do you know of one person who has experienced this? Just one person. And they say, well, Jesus or Buddha. Well, if you read about the life of Jesus or Buddha, you will see that the enlightened ones had the most difficult lives of anyone. They did not have it easy. They did not have it their way. They just had life as it was. And their awakening was not because life was easy, but perhaps it was because life was difficult. And in the process of living life, they became accepting of what was involved in life, all of the pieces of it, all of the time. And I think that's where they began to breathe a little bit easier. So I think my message for people is very simple. There's something guiding every step of our life. Rather than this whole idea that we're looking for life, consider the possibility that life is looking for us. That something is taking us precisely where we need to be, and we're going to end up there no matter what we do or what we don't do. And it's extremely exciting, because when we have these flashes of insights, and all of a sudden we notice something, and 10 minutes later it manifests, you realize the miraculousness of life. You are deeply, deeply touched. And you realize that we understand absolutely nothing. You know? And you're living in the question. And you're living in the unknown. And that is the blessing. That is the blessing. So for me, the whole integration of light, vision, and consciousness is that this light guides the eye, guides the physiology. It touches some very deep aspect of the soul, and whether it is associated with the pineal, the third eye, who knows the exact answers to these questions. But what is very, very exciting is this possibility that what we have been looking for is actually looking for us in each moment. And once we begin to notice that, then maybe something goes, thank God I'm home.
And yet there is a lot of people around the world that want to experience more, which brings me back to my original question. How can we experience more of that light, more of that love? You're saying just, step back and let life happen, at the same time be engaged with it. There is this dynamic, or there are some practices or some things that we can do to open up further. Or is it just a matter of the healing of the heart and color therapy and all those other wonderful things, so that the light can more come in and really show us the way?
I remember when Buddha supposedly experienced his enlightenment, and what he said after that is, my God, it didn't take anything and I was working so hard. So let's come back to your question. Can I have more of it? Have you ever been in a swimming pool and tried to move your hand against the water? The more you push, the more the resistance of the water. Life is designed to be effortless. When you look at the sky, an astronomer looks up and all the planets are going out around the sun, there isn't a big fan that's blowing them around or somebody up there pushing them. They seemingly just move by themselves. Nobody knows exactly how your heart beats, and it does it all day long. We don't even breathe on our own. Something is even breathing us all the time. And yet we think we have to make something happen, that we have to find, that we have to do something, that we have to practice at it. It's not my experience. I understand that there's a huge movement of wanting to be more. If there's a desire for more, you're already on the track. The desire means that something in you has seen this potential. It means you are already in the river being taken in the correct direction. Of course, the mind is very, very impatient. Mm-hmm. It says, I want it yesterday. Did you ever wonder why there is this desire for more? The desire for more is basically another way of saying is, I'm uncomfortable with where I am. Mm-hmm. I'm uneasy. Please get me comfortable. So it's all of that movement towards more, towards change, towards different, towards more juicy, is another way of saying, I'm very uncomfortable with where I am right now. Let's change that. We'll just take the remote control of life and we'll choose differently and we'll change the channel. I've never found anyone that could actually do that, by the way, that it actually held. Because for me, creation does not occur in this little chatterbox that we call thinking, which I actually don't think is thinking, it's just worrying. When we're really in the flow and in the juiciness of life, there's no thinking at all. When you're having a wonderful time, are you trying to make things better? Or more spiritual?
You're certainly enjoying it.
You're just enjoying it. So the only time we want things to be different is when they're not going our way. Mm-hmm. The great way is not difficult for those who have no preferences. The point I'm making is this. All of that wanting is only because we're uncomfortable. When we get comfortable with the fact that life is not always comfortable, then something changes all by itself. And I have never found that the weekend workshop changed my life. It might get me all excited for about 10 days, but then I find I go back to being the person I always was. The real teacher is life. Life provides for us a continual, perfect, homeopathic remedy for everything in our life that needs to expand. And the discomfort of life, which most everyone wants to escape, is actually the sign that change is in place. If you go to a physicist or a biologist or a chemist and you say, how do you know change is taking place in an experiment? And they'll say, oh, that's easy. As long as all the parts of it are being perturbed, aggravated, agitated, that's the sign. Perturbance is actually the catalyst for change. When you put your clothes in the washing machine and you fill it up with water and you put soap in there, does it get clean? Mm-hmm. How does it get clean?
Shaken.
Ah, that's right. That's right. It's the agitation that gets it clean. You could put all the water and soap you want, but without the agitation, the clothes doesn't get clean. The same thing is true with our life. We have all of these things, but it's the agitation that gets the life clean. The agitation is not necessarily when we're comfortable. The agitation is when we are in a state of not knowing, when we don't know what's happening. And that is the sign that we're on the right track. Most everything we do to change that is because we're uncomfortable with that agitating piece. Everyone is uncomfortable with that agitating piece. It's not comfortable to be uncomfortable. But when we can settle into it, and this is what life does, after a while we begin to realize that every time we get upset, we don't die. And every time we get more and more comfortable with that, there's more of a that happens inside of us. All of a sudden, these kinds of things that we have been yearning for, they show up at our front door. All by themselves. All by themselves. But it takes a whole life of doing things to come to the place Buddha came to when he realized, my God, there was nothing to do. So the process of looking is natural, and if we're very, very fortunately engraced, eventually we come to the place of realized, oh my God, it was looking for me my whole life. My whole life it was looking for me.
Beautiful. What do you think then the earth is going through right now? Because it surely is shaking a little bit. Do you feel more light coming in and some changes ahead?
Well, you know what a scale is? Yeah? Well, when the scale is like this, and things are heavy over here, and this part of the scale is up, everybody knows what that is, and everybody's used to that. But as this starts to happen, and this starts to happen, and this starts to happen, as it begins to get in this position, everything gets very shaky. And the reason why is it's about to do this. And that's called a paradigm shift. A paradigm shift means that we go from here to here without going through the space in between. Poof, all of a sudden something happens. Well, the whole world is going through a change right now. Everything that used to be, we now realize it doesn't work. Using oil for energy, it doesn't work. Our medical system, while thank God that we have it when we need it, for the most part, there's a big part of it that doesn't work. So what's happening is that there's a new piece coming. And all of the disturbance is not because the world is coming to an end. It's just because the new world is about to be born. And coming through the birth canal is not easy. It's not easy to catch your breath. So this is not new. This has been going on throughout history. And there are periods where it's a little bit more accelerated, like now, than at other times. And that is when there's a big shift about to occur. You know, all of a sudden, all of these disturbances are happening in the planet. We've got temperatures that we're not used to. It's colder than it used to be. It's hotter than it used to be. There's more tornadoes, more fires, more earthquakes, more everything. And it's scaring the shit out of us. That's what's going on. And yet, at the same time, there's a whole new movement that's happening. We don't see it. We get caught up in the agitation. But look at all of the new technologies that are happening. Look at the course of human development. Look at what the conversation is that's going on, not only in science, but in medicine and in spirituality. All of those fields are merging back together. The new paradigm of wellness is beginning to have to include all aspects of human experience. Science is no longer going to be a science that is based on materialism. It's going to be a science that includes that which is unseen. That is what the new science is. It's a merging of science and spirituality simultaneously. So it's an incredibly exciting period. It's maybe the most exciting period. And while there is huge highs of excitements, there are huge frightening pieces of it at the same time. And that is the nature of change. That is the perturbation, the agitation that I was talking about. And when that happens, everybody says, oh my God, I want it to be different. I want to get there faster. I want to save place. I want to have more money. I want to have better health. And that's what most of us do all day in our life. It doesn't require an earthquake or changes in temperature to make that happen. Every time we're running a little short on our paycheck, we cannot make the rent payment, or we don't think we can make the rent payment, or our relationship is a little bit on the rocks, or somebody says, I think you have this disorder in your body, every time we go through that, we get shaken up. That's just a fact of life. We do not become comfortable with someone saying to us, I think you have some cancer in your body. No one's comfortable with that. I don't care how enlightened they are. Maybe we start to get comfortable with that maybe 15 days from our death. Something begins to release. But up until that time, if something pushes your head underwater, something in you will not be able to let go. You will do everything it can to get air. And that's what we do in life. When something in life pushes our head under the water, we try to get air. We want it to be different. We want to be comfortable. We want safety, security, and predictability. Three things that don't exist on planet Earth.
What do you think are the new values then of this new Earth, the new paradigm?
Integrity. Integrity means integral. It means oneness. It means truth. Integrity is everything. It's just that we are life. Not that we are living life, that we are life. And a recognition that life is living us. That we are not the most evolved creatures on the planet and we control the animals and the plants and it's not that at all. Life shows us through the earthquake and tsunamis in Japan and all of these things that are going on around the planet that we don't control anything. Anything. So this concocted idea that I can make anything happen in my mind just because I change the channel, I don't know. Maybe there's some truth in that. I've never experienced that. What I have experienced is a great deal of humility. Because I realized not only am I not driving the car of life doesn't even have a steering wheel. It doesn't even have a rear view mirror. And there is a great trust that has to occur. One of the practices or things that have interested me in the last 20, 25 years is whenever I meet someone maybe 80, 85, 90 years old that's had a lot of life under their belt, I say to them, you've been here a very long time. I know you've learned a lot. Have you found anything in life you could control? And they all have the same answer. They start laughing. They said, it's not in our hands. And my parents lived into their 90s. And they were very wise people. So there's a difference between the reality of life and our ideas about life. It's only in the process of living life and getting a little older where we begin to sage rather than age. We begin to gain a little wisdom, that we realize that we're like a feather in the wind. And as we become very humble and very accepting of the magic, the miraculousness of life itself, and all of the pieces of life, the times that are easy, the times that are not so easy, then we gain a degree of wisdom. And then perhaps we begin to enter the kingdom. And then things still occur that perhaps are not always so comfortable, but yet we become more comfortable with those uncomfortable places, and we go through a little bit easier and a little bit easier and a little bit easier. So the message for people is, notice anything that enters your awareness, because when it enters your awareness, that's looking for you. Don't try to prioritize things. Whatever created this universe has prioritized it perfectly already. Doesn't need another prioritization. When something enters your awareness, notice it, be with it, complete it. When you use the dish, wash it, dry it, put it away. When you get out of bed, make the bed, make it beautiful, so when you enter at night, it's like a piece of art. Return phone calls, return your emails, pay your bills when you receive them, and if you can't pay, call the person and let them know that you owe it to them, but it's not available yet. In other words, respond to every time life enters your awareness. And from that practice, you will realize you miss absolutely nothing. That process is called presence. It's not me being present, it's just presence. And all of a sudden we realize there's always something entering our awareness. And everything has equal importance. The washing of the dish is no less important than being with your lover, than saying I love you, than paying a bill, than paying attention to a child, than paying attention to each other. All of those things have the same value. And then at a moment when we're not looking, we experience this juiciness of life that your show is about.
A special wink to Shirley MacLaine, because you're Saging and Aging. That's one of her best books, I thought.
Oh.
It's a wonderful book.
Actually, I don't know where that came from. That was an expression that...
Yeah, that came to my consciousness as Shirley MacLaine, soon to be interviewed on the Juicy Living Tour.
There we go. I'm in good company then.
Well, this has been a wonderful conversation. Thank you so much for all those words of wisdom and the excitement of this conversation, what it brings, and how much more open I feel from this.
I want to share one more thing. What I've shared with you is what's come to me in my life. It's my direct experience. It is what's moving me right now. Each person must follow their direct experience. So the things that I've shared with you are just for consideration. If they feel comfortable, then you already know it. If it feels uncomfortable, trust your own knowing. Each person is on their own journey, and that journey is appropriate for them.
Thank you, Jacob.
Thank you, Lilous.
Much love from Maui, Hawaii.
No ka'oi.
See you very soon, and thank you for all your support every day. Send you much love from here. Bye.
Same from me.
Hello, my Juicy co-creators. Lilous here on the Juicy Living Tour. Today I'm on the beautiful island of Maui in Hawaii with a very special person that I was introduced to and is very often mentioned in a lot of interviews with very well-known people around the world. I'm here with Jacob Liberman. Hello.
Hello, hello. It's nice to be with you.
Nice to be with you too in your own home here on Maui. Yeah. You have done tremendous work, pioneer work. You're an optometrist. How do we say this in English?
Optometrist and vision scientist, yes.
You wrote many books, and we're really going to speak about the light, the vision, the consciousness. You believe that light is the medicine of the future. Is that right?
I think it's the medicine of the now. I think it's the medicine in each moment of life. Because the light that enters our eyes is continually guiding every part of our being to the smallest portion of every cell to continually respond to life. So basically, light entering the eyes causes every cell to orchestrate its internal function and then synchronize a number of varieties. Why do we see differently? Each of us brings a different perception to life, and all together those perceptions make up the experience that we have.
Would you say that, I mean, all of us want to experience great life. We want to experience our potential, especially when we're on the spiritual journey. So most of us want to have this, you know, this information, this light come to us so we can live our greatest potential. You're saying that vision is really not just from the eye, but from the heart. So, and I love that you say that. It makes perfect sense. And then our vision of the world expands, and then we can see more. So more light can come in. Is that correlated?
Yes. You know, there's one of my very favorite pieces was written 1800 years ago. It's called the Sin Sin Ming. It was written by the third Zen patriarch. And the beginning of the piece says, "The great way is not difficult for those who have no preferences." In other words, when you are unconditionally accepting, then you have the ability to see the great way. Jesus said it in a different way. He's quoted as saying, when you see up and down as the same, when you see the outside and the inside as the same, when you see a man as, it grabs the attention of the eye. That's why we say, oh, it caught my eye. But what was the it? The it is the intelligence of life, and the intelligence of life is impregnated into this formless, non-material something that is totally invisible called light. The light brings the message of the universe into the eye. The eye has to look at the light, and then the person knows where to move next in their life. So the intelligence of life is guiding every step of our life. We are not looking for things as we believe. Life is looking for us. Grabs the attention of the eye, and it tells the eye where to look next. What is next? That's the next step of my life. The same light entering the eyes, as I mentioned before, keeps bringing my physiology into appropriate relationship with life itself. That's how we know when to wake up, when to go to sleep. That's what regulates the cycle of a woman on a monthly level. That's what regulates all of the cycles of our life, is light entering by way of the eyes, the windows of the soul.
So why is there sometimes we see some things and not
itself with Mother Nature? In other words, the whole purpose of light is to guide us into a state of oneness with life. So light entering the body cues everything in our being about what's happening in Mother Nature. And then the whole process is for our nature and Mother Nature to come into oneness. So light is the most powerful environmental factor. It is continually stimulating and regulating and cueing every piece of our physiology and neurology on a continual level, so that we are always dancing, flowing, if you will, effortlessly with life. So that is the homeodynamic process of life is guided by light.
And in that light, therefore, there's information that comes to us?
Yes. Well, think about it this way. You're looking at me because light over here has grabbed the attention of your eye. And your eye responded as a reflex, just like your knee when the doctor hits it, and is looking in this direction. So the light is guiding the eye.
At some others, why are we more receptive then to a certain light or to a certain path than another?
We each have a different nature. There are thousands of trees that are part of the tree kingdom, but they're all different. Some of them are shorter and wider. Some of them are taller and thinner. Some have very deep roots. Some have very shallow roots. Some of them, when the wind blows, they break. Some of them, when the wind blows, they dance. So they all have a different nature. They are all responding differently, having a different job, if you will. We're all we're all human beings. Aside from our size differences, aside from the coloration of our skin, we are each born with certain skills. Artists are not made. They're born as artists. Even really exceptional athletes, yes, they can improve their game through practice, but they're natural. They know it by heart. It's there from the beginning. So we are not all designed to see the world the same. Some look at the trees, some see the forest, some have a little bit of both. There's probably an infinite